Hello there, future teacher. Did you know that according to the National Council on Teacher Quality, the NES subtest number 2, that's exam number 103, the one that, we're going to be covering today, taking a practice test, and this one covers math, science, arts, health, and fitness. This is actually statistically the lowest first-time pass rate of the entire NES elementary teacher certification exam series. And when I was looking up the information and the data, I found out that approximately 16% of all first-time test takers for this exam, they fail. So I'm not here to freak you out. I am here to give you the information and tell you how real taking this exam is. And that's exactly why in this video today, you and I are going to be completing a 16-question multiple choice practice test that not only covers all of the types of content that you will likely see when taking your actual exam, such as the math and the fitness and the health and the science, but what I really like about this miniature practice test is that it is proportionally the same length of time given. So when you take your actual exam, you will be asked to complete 75 multiple choice questions, and you'll be given an hour and 45 minutes to do that. Now again, in this test, this mini test that we're going to be taking together, this gives you 16 questions, but you're going to be given the same time frame per question. So it's good for pacing. It's also good to check how well you know the general content and material. Now, again, if you're looking to go a step beyond this and you want the full test prep, make sure that you click the link in the description below where we provide 2 full-length online timed practice tests as well as a complete study guide to make sure that passing this is super simple for you. So without further ado, whether this is going to be your first time taking the exam or a retake, let's just make sure that you pass, and let's get started on this practice test. All right, and here we are at teacherpreps.com. We have the Elementary Education Subtest 2 exam number 103. And what we want to do is scroll on down, down, down until you see the practice test number 1 labeled right here. All right, now let's click this blue button, Start Exam. And before we do so, make sure that you've got your notebook and pen or a tablet out. And let's just label this NES Elementary Education Subtest number 2. Remember, this is exam number 103, and this is our practice test. All right, so now let's click Start Exam, and let's just take a look at the format here. We have approximately 22 minutes to complete a total of 16 questions, where down below we see the question marked in yellow, and then we have 4 selected response that we need to identify the correct solution for. So without further ado, let's begin by reading question number 1. And this states, a pencil box contains 13 red pencils and 8 blue pencils. If there are 4 identical boxes in a crate, how many of each colored pencil are in the crate? The problem shown best assesses students' understanding of which property. So first and foremost, notice here how our answer options are not actually solving the problem, but instead first understanding what type of problem it is. So if we were going to solve, we would simply multiply by 4. But remember, the real question is what property are we testing? So we have the different properties: associative, commutative, distributive, and identity. And what we need to do is we can think, okay, so if we were going to solve this, what we would do is we would write 4 times parentheses 13 plus 8 and parentheses, or another way we could write it is simply by parentheses 4 times 13 and parentheses plus parentheses 4 times 8. And now we can see here how this 4 is being distributed, and so that would be the distributive property. Now, test tip, if you see a problem where you're multiplying a sum and breaking it into smaller chunks, you're using the distributive territory. So watch out for that pattern. Now also remember, just in case if it's been a while, the associative is for grouping. So let me just write here. So associative, think grouping. And commutative, let me just put that as C, think order or ordering. And then identity, for me, is always the easiest to look at and to identify because you're going to be looking for literally a number 0 in there. and also or multiplying by 1. So either a 0 or multiplying by 1. That's the identity property. And then the distributive property, we'll put D down below, that's when you break it up and you multiply by each section. So you're distributing that part. So we're going to go answer option C, distributive property. Let's go on to question number 2. Now, this one here reads, a container holds beads of different hues. 1/3 of the beads in the container are yellow, 1/4 of them are purple, 3/12 of the beads are orange. The question asks us which diagram best models the problem shown. So again, before we even, do any of the math, we need to better understand what the illustrations A, B, C, and D are showing us. So let's solve this using our test ninja skills. Now think about this. Let me just write this down. Always writing down the notes helps me to solve the problem. So we have 1/3 of the beads are yellow. We have 1/4 of the beads are purple. And then we have 3/12 of the beads are orange. And the question is, which diagram is best representing that? So first, always count the total. So looks like we have 8 on the side and 6. And remember, 6 times 8 would give us a total of 48 squares, or in this case, beads. Now, what we want to do is we want to work with the fraction one at a time. So if we're going to be starting with the yellow, 1/3, we can think to ourselves, for example, how would we get 1/3 of 48? So just think about that, 1/3 of 48. That's a multiplication problem where we can simply multiply the top, which gives us 48, by 3. And I know that 3 goes into 48 12 times. So we can now understand that there are 12 yellow beads. So first and foremost, I'm just going to pause right here and I'm going to look at the A, B, C, and D answer options, and I'm going to scope out which of them have 12 yellow beads. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay, so A, B, and C all have 12 yellow beads, whereas D doesn't. So we can use the process of elimination and scratch out D. Now let's go on down to work with purple. So purple, remember, is 1/4 of this equation. If there's a total of 48, we can do this multiplication. Again, 48 remains at the top by 4. And we can ask ourselves, well, how many times does 4 go into 48, or essentially 48 divided by 4, which we know that to be 12. So we have another number of 12, and this time that is for orange. So we also need 12 orange, and let's go ahead and see where 12 orange lays. So we have 2, 4, 6 right here. So it's not going to be A, it's not going to be D. How about letter B? 3, 6, 9, and 12, whereas right here, looks like 4 by 5, so that would be 20, and our only answer option that remains would be answer option B. Now, if you didn't see that, you would just go ahead and you would complete the same task for the 3 out of 12. We can think 3 out of 12 by 48. Again, that becomes a multiplication problem where we put the 1 in the denominator, and then we can do 3 times 48, and then also 12 by 1, and we would come up with the same solution. We would say 48 times 3, right? And we would do the 24, 12, 13, 14, and 140, that becomes 144 out of this 12. And we know that 144 divided by 12 is 12. And so let's just double check here that we have 12 purple. That would actually confirm that we have the right answer. So this is good that we're going this extra step. We have 4, 8, 12, and that makes total sense now. So answer option B is the best response. Let's go on down to problem number 3. Reading this says, at a local parks weekend event, 2 types of fresh juices are being served, apple and orange. If the park served 176 glasses of juice and 3 of every 8 glasses were apple juice, how many glasses were orange juice? Which diagram best represents how to solve this problem? I really like these types of questions. They not only ask us to solve the problem, but they do it in a more fun and visual way than just getting raw numbers. So we have these different diagrams, and I can zoom in the screen here. And so what we want to do is we kind of want to, I always like to think about this in my own head before I just jump in. So I like to recap the problem. Now, what do we know? At a local park event, there was a total of 176 glasses of juice. And part of these was a mix. Some were apple and some were orange juice. Now we're told that 3 out of every 8 glasses were apple juice. That means the remaining 5 of every 8 glasses were orange juice. So 5 out of 8 are orange juice. And what we need to do is we need to find how many glasses were orange juice. So how 5 out of 8 is how many of the total of 176. So now let's think in groups of 8. If every group of 8 glasses includes 3 apple and 5 orange, then we can divide the total number of glasses, 176, into equal size chunks of 8. So step 1 here will be to divide 176 by 8 to find the number of equal groups. And we know that 8 goes into 176 22 times. So there are 22 groups of 8 glass servings. Now, step number 2 will be to multiply the number of orange juices per group, remember, which is 5, by the number of total groups, which we just found to be 22. So what we want to do is we want to take 5 times 22, and I'm just thinking to myself, remember, a lot of number flexibility, number sense is going to be beneficial when taking your exam. So instead of doing this the long way, I want to think how I can solve this faster. 5 times 20 is 100, and 5 times 2 is 10. So 5 times 22 is going to be a total of 110 glasses, which were orange juice. Now let's choose the diagram that actually represents what we just found. So as I'm looking at this diagram 1, diagram 2, diagram 3, and diagram 4, it looks like diagram 2 shows the total split into 8 equal boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And each box is 22, where this is the ratio of 3 apple to 5 orange. So it looks like we're going to be selecting diagram number 2. Let's go here. Let's zoom back out so we can see this better. And let's click the next button. Nice work on that. All right, here we have question number 4. And this one reads, during a 4th grade lesson on triangles, 2 students are discussing the relationship between the base and height of a triangle. Student P takes a triangular piece of paper. So let me just, again, it always helps me if I just kind of draw it out. Triangular piece of paper, and cuts it vertically from the apex, like that, forming 2 right angles, just like that. Student P then rearranges these 2 right triangles to form a rectangle. So notice that if you took them apart, you could create a rectangle together. This activity can be used to introduce which formula regarding area of triangle. Now, this is asking you to demonstrate your understanding of formulas as well as geometry, and make sure while taking your exam or while preparing for your exam that you know all of the formulas that are listed in our study guide to make sure that you are fully prepared. Now, this question is actually genius because it's asking about understanding, not memorization, which is why I like it so much. So we have this visual that we've just put right on the piece of paper. Hope you're writing that out with me. Now let's think, what's the formula for an area of a rectangle? Remember, area of a rectangle equals base times height. But a triangle is only half that space. So the formula we're teaching here is area equals, usually we say area equals half base height, or half times base times height. Written in another way, remember this is the decimal point way I see right here, 0.5 is half, so the correct solution would be answer option letter B. Let's move on now to question number 5. The question here, getting to do some good math here, evaluate this expression. Now it says 3 plus 2 times parentheses 8 minus 6 and parentheses plus 5 to the second power, or 5 squared. So let me just go ahead and write this out. We have 3 plus 2 times parentheses 8 minus 6 and parentheses plus 5 squared. Now let's break this down using the order of operations, or remember, I'll put this in red, PEMDAS, which stands for parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So now that we can remember this, let's go ahead and actually use PEMDAS to solve the problem at hand. All right, the first step here is the parentheses, which I see is 8 minus 6, and 8 minus 6 is 2. I kind of like to use this little drop down right here, and then I just rewrite all of the problem that I didn't yet use. So here we go. Second step is exponents. Remember, 5 squared equals 25, and again, I'm just going to drop down everything that I have not used quite yet. Step number 3 is multiplication. 2 times 2 is 4. Bring everything else down as you know. And then step number 5 is to add it all up. And here we have 3 and 4 is 7. And let's see here, 7 and 25 would give us a sum of 32. And I see answer option C says 32. So we're good to go. Let's click next, move on to question number 6. This one reads, 3/4 of a smartphone's memory is used. 1/6 of the memory is, 1/6 of the used memory is videos. What fraction of the smartphone's total memory contains videos? So this one is a straight up multiply the fractions type of problem, and here's how you want to think of it. So what we're told is that 3/4 of the phone's memory is used, whereas 1/6 of that used memory is videos. So the question that we really need to answer is, what fraction of the total memory is videos? Step number 1 is going to be to multiply the fractions. So again, we're taking 1/6 of 3/4, and we can write that out like 1/6 of, remember, of means multiplication, 3/4, which means we have 3 for the numerator and then 24 for our denominator. And I also know that this simplifies to 1/8. And if I look at answer option letter B, we have 1/8. So let's go on down to question number 7. Now this one here reads, a car rental company charges $30 per day for renting a car and an additional 20 cents per mile driven. If a customer rents a car for 5 days and drives a total of 400 miles, how much will they be charged? All right, now this is a classic 2-part cost problem. Let's break it down together step by step. Now the rental car charges $30 per day plus 20 cents per mile driven. The customer rents the car for 5 days and drives 400 miles. So let's calculate both parts. Step number 1 is the cost of the rental days. So $30 per day times 5 days. 30 times 5, I know that that is 150, and our unit is dollars. Step number 2 is to calculate the cost of the mileage. So here we have 20 cents per mile times how many miles they drove, which was 400, and 0.2 or 20 cents times 400 will give us $800. excuse me, let me go back here, will give us $80 that they paid in mileage fees. Now let's add these up to find the sum. 150 plus 80 is going to give us a total of $230. I'm looking at the answer options and C looks correct. Let's move on now to question number 8, where I see that we have a chart or some visual here. And what we're going to be doing is starting with reading the question. A farmer intends to construct a square pen for his sheep with an area Z squared feet and will require W feet of fencing. The graph below illustrates the relationship between Z and W. Which of the following equations represents this relationship? Now let's take a look at what we're given here in this chart, relationship between area Z and perimeter W of the pen. So we have perimeter on the y-axis. We have area Z in square feet on the x-axis. All right, now we've got to read the scenario and the graph carefully in order to set this up correctly. Now, what I like to do personally is to kind of recap this in my own head so that I understand what's expected of me. So I'm going to say a farmer wants to build a square pen. I know that. The area, which is Z, Z equals the area of the square in square feet, whereas W is the perimeter. Another way to say that, it's the amount around the fencing. So what we're trying to do is to figure out the equation that connects area Z to perimeter W. So now let's go on and move to the graph. Let's pick out an easy point where I can see that the exam makers, they want us to look at this 4, 8 coordinate because this is the only one that's labeled, and it's like one of these that's like right on the line. So always when you're taking your teacher certification exam, look for hints because sometimes they point out little elements that will help you answer the question. So we're going to start with 4, 8 because it's so neatly given to us. Now that means that this area of 4 is a square. Then, so if we start with 4, then the area is 4 because area is on the x-axis. We go up to 4, and that means that if we do, let's just say 4, the square root of 4, remember, is 2. And if that happened to be the case, we're just testing things out right now, then the perimeter would be 8. And if you're asking how I got that, well, remember, perimeter is when you add up all the sides, so that would be 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. Another way to say that is 4 times 2, and that all equals 8. Remember, this is the perimeter. And so let's go here, and that would basically mean that this was the answer, but I don't see that in our answer options down below. However, I do see the formulaic expression of this, which is the 4 and the Z like that. Because when we put in a number inside the square root multiplied by the 4, we will come up with the correct perimeter. This would be answer option letter D. Which scenario best describes how a new species of bird could evolve due to specific environmental changes? All right, so we have question number 9, and here we go. A bird's feathers. Okay, so clearly we are finished with the math, and looks like we're moving on to the science. This is all about evolution, so here's the rule of thumb. Remember, evolution equals the physical traits changing over generations to survive in a changing environment. We're looking for permanent inherited change caused by environmental pressure. So let's scan the options. Brighter feathers, that would not be a genetic change. Letter B, singing louder for spring, that's behavior, not evolution. Answer option C, migrating shorter distances due to mild winters. Closer, but this is a temporary behavioral change, not new for species. And answer option letter D, stronger beaks to crack through seeds. That's exactly survival of the fittest in action. And this would be the correct solution. That would be about evolution. All right, moving on to to number 10. Reading question 10 says, before conducting a science unit on ecosystems that involves multiple outdoor field trips, what is the essential first step in elementary school teacher should take? Is it A, informing students and parents about the field trip details, B, scheduling the dates and locations for the field trips, C, preparing educational materials and activities for the field trips, or D, ensuring the field trip locations are safe and accessible for all? Remember that safety and accessibility are non-negotiables in teaching, and so if it's not safe, it's not going to happen, period. So as soon as I see something to do with safe in a field trip, that is my test tip to know this is definitely the correct solution. All right, let's move on to question number 11, which asks, what is the primary role of decomposers in the cycle of an ecosystem? All right, so let's talk decomposers. The question really is, what is the primary role? And so, little golden rule breakdown. Remember, decomposers don't create, they clean up. So let's take a look at the answer options and see if any of those are good fits. Producing oxygen and sustaining plant life. B, capturing energy from the sun and storing it chemically. So first of all, A, that's what plants do. And B, this is called photosynthesis. Answer option C, breaking down dead material and recycling nutrients. Ding, ding, ding. That's exactly what decomposers do. And answer option D reads consuming living plants and animals and maintaining population growth. And that's more like what predators and consumers do. So the cycle here would be answer option letter C. Moving on now to question number 12, which reads, which ecological interaction involves two or more species living closely together, often benefiting each other? So, all right, we have two species living together. The last part is key right here, often benefiting together. Notice and just look for little phrases like that kind of give away the answer. Now, again, understanding the vocabulary is going to be key. So if you didn't know what any of these meant, it would, your next best choice would be to guess. And but we don't have to guess, right? Because we can talk about this. So predation, that's when one species is actually, eating the other. So it's definitely not mutual. Letter B, this is when one animal is harmed and the other one doesn't care. You can think of this as like the other just doesn't even notice that the one is kind of like feeding from or on the other. And then symbiosis, this is the correct answer. And this is when living things work together, they live together, and it's mutually beneficial. That right there would be the correct solution. Whereas answer option letter D, this herbivory, this is when animals eat plants. Again, not a close relationship and certainly not mutual. So answer option C for number 12 is correct. Let's go on down to number 13, which asks, a science teacher shows students a sample of sedimentary rock and asks how it was formed. Which process is responsible for the formation of sedimentary rock? So here we have how sedimentary rock is formed. The clue is in the name sediment. So let's go ahead and read answer options A through D. Melting and solidification of magma beneath Earth's surface. Well, that is how igneous rocks are formed, but not sedimentary. So B reads compaction of cementation of sediment over time. And they kind of gave us a hint with this sediment word nestled inside answer option B. This is the one I'm going to choose, but let's go ahead and read C. Intense heat and pressure altering existing rock layers. That's how metamorphic rocks are formed. Again, we're talking about sedimentary rocks. And answer option D reads rapid cooling of lava from volcanic eruption. And that's more of like also igneous. And how the way they're formed. So answer option B would be correct. The important point is not that you necessarily know about sedimentary rock for your upcoming exam, but that you know about igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, metamorphic rocks, and also like how they are formed. So let's move on to question number 14. This one asks, students in a health class, so we're moving on to a health topic here, are learning the Heimlich maneuver. This technique is most effective for assisting a person experiencing which of the following emergencies: severe bleeding, heart attack, choking, or a broken bone. Now, when you become a teacher, I know before I started teaching, I needed to pass a first aid, CPR little like day course that the school paid for me to go to on like a Saturday morning, and we learned the Heimlich maneuver. And so this is probably going to be something that you will eventually have firsthand experience. I mean, hopefully just in the training, but it allows for a solution if a student is choking. So definitely something that you want to be prepared for, both on your exam and when you become an actual instructor. All right, so question number 15, this one asks, when student, let me just make sure that I chose choking. Okay, good. Question number 15 reads, when students create a movement piece that symbolizes the seasonal cycle of a tree, they are utilizing which dance concept? Okay, keyword here is dance. We're in the sort of like drama, music, dance part of your exam. And let's read here. Answer options: A, form; B, sequence; C, contrast; D, unity. And which could this be? Answer option A, form, is the best, because form in dance is how a movement piece is organized, kind of like using the patterns or sections to represent something abstract like seasons. So that's exactly what's happening here, and so form would be the best. All right, so moving on to our last question. Number 16, this one asks, which element of music best describes the sequence of pitches in a song that are perceived as a single entity? So clearly we are in the music phase, music and arts phase of the exam, and we have A, melody; B, pitch; C, rhyme; D, timbre. I'm not a music person, not exactly sure how that one's pronounced. But I do know what they mean. So, because I had to memorize it for my own teacher certification exam. So let's go ahead and give you a quick brief of each in case you need the refresher. Remember, the melody is a series of pitches played in order, and that's going to be the correct response here. Pitch is just a single sound. It might be high, it might be low. It's kind of like a building block, but it's not a sequence. Whereas rhyme is the timing of sounds. So you can think like beats and rests, but it's not a pitch. And then the timbre is the tone color. So you can think like how a flute sounds different than a guitar. But again, it doesn't have anything to do with the sequencing. So, or the pitch, the pitch sequence. So the correct response here would be answer option A, melody. Let's click the submit button and check how we did. Okay, great. We got a score of 16 out of 16. And what we can do now is we can go down and we can review each of the questions that we answered. Again, if you are looking for the full-length timed practice test to make sure that you are really ready for your upcoming exam, click the link in the description below and enroll into our full test prep that gives you a comprehensive study guide, as well as 2 of those full-length online timed practice tests. All right, without further ado, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you found this helpful. If so, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you would like to see more. Thanks so much for watching.